we're supposed to have a public hearing for communication equipment special permit petition by Mobility, which we'll get to in a second. They have withdrawn their application. We have a public hearing, definitive subdivision application by Nazir Shamsuddin for 46 and 48 Meyer Road. We have a master planning update, site plan review for a sign at the Public Safety and Senior Center property downtown. We have board discussion regarding some future bylaws and some other board business regarding minutes and so forth. So the first thing on our agenda is was a petition by Mobility LLC for communication special equipment special permit. They have withdrawn their application without prejudice to this date, and Patrick has advised that maybe we vote to deny it without prejudice, just to kind of clean it, kind of close it, so it's not just hanging out there. So somebody wants to make a motion to that effect, that would be great.
So move.
Okay, any second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you. What? Okay, next is 4648 Meyer Road.
I'm just concerned there doesn't appear to be a quorum tonight.
We have 4.
Yeah.
So we have a 9-member board, right?
No.
No, 7.
There's
There's 7 full members and 2 associate members when needed, so
I see.
we have 4 of 7.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, honorable members, my name is Bill Sheehan, counsel to the Shamsuddins. Typically, when we only have 4 of 7, I'd ask to continue the matter if that's acceptable to the board.
I don't have an issue with that.
Right.
Anybody? No?
No.
I have no issue.
And whenever your next meeting is and you expect to have more than 4, that'd be fine.
Yeah. When is our next one? Is it 2 weeks or is it?
That's March the 5th.
March 5th.
Will be the next meeting.
All right. That would be great, and I appreciate that very much.
So do I.
Great.
Thank you.
So the board should
Yeah.
Vote to continue.
vote to continue.
I make a motion, we continue the hearing for March 5th for the definitive subdivision application by Nazir Shamsuddin.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous?
Thank you.
So much of the audience is probably going to go.
Yeah. So I'm going to take the site plan review for public safety building out of order if there's enough people here. So,
Might
Chief
we ask
here?
them to file out. I was just thinking they could all file out and then.
yeah.
Everyone came for a fight. Do we know anything about their new position, if there is one?
What new position?
I don't think we're really accepting of that road. Yeah. Yeah, I read that. But I think, I don't know.
I made an effort to get here and look at this.
If there's going to be, yeah, thanks for coming. I thought the way the town was forming its position, they were saying it wasn't going to be adequate. Maybe they should do a subdivision that reaches all the way to the road.
They decided they wanted.
Better odds, maybe? Because they needed all 4.
Well, there really wasn't an option. I mean, other than accept the legal of our attorneys and then start working on the subdivision.
I'm up.
Yeah, well, whoever's up for this, yeah.
Hey, Russ.
Hello.
Early night for you.
they want to hear from you. So I'll let the police chief give you the details on this, but obviously this is for a new sign in front of the public safety building. And site plan review is in your court, so. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, you get the packets? You already got the packets?
Yeah, we have packets, but
Okay, so what we're proposing, and I believe Patrick already told you, also you have in there, we're proposing to change the existing, we have an existing sign out front, double-sided sign, carved sign. It's 3 feet 10 inches by 3 feet 5 inches. It's an old-style sign, and it sits back off the road. And what we're doing is, what we're asking for is, and we have a variance on it now. What we're asking for is to put an electronic, we're asking to put an electronic sign there now to replace the sign that we have. Okay. Okay. To replace the sign that we have now. So in front of you, you have the sign that we're looking to replace. This is a drawing, a rendering of what we're looking to put there now. Now, a lot of the reason why we're trying to do this is have a better way of exchanging information with the people in town. And we started looking at this about 3 years ago, 2015, we started looking at this. How can we get a better way, or what's a better way to get information out to the townspeople? And then when it really hit is we put as you know, in town, we have a portable sign. And then people started noticing the portable sign, and then we started getting requests for the portable sign. And then at a meeting I was recently at, when I was discussing this, one of the people in the meeting said, well, where is your sign? I said, it's right next to the portable sign, the permanent sign. So everyone reads the portable sign when they come into town. They're reading the messages that are being on the portable sign, so that tells me that people want the information. So I'm looking to put the sign that we're proposing here for an exchange of information. It's going to go right in the same place, in the same area that the existing sign is in. And if you look on the dimensions and everything are on that, the only thing that we're going to do different is on the side of these signs, you'll see that it looks like these are wood posts. What we want to do is we want to put the granite posts, because what is there now is granite. And what we want to do is we try to mock or mimic the same sign we have now. The sign that's there now has granite posts on the ends and has that rise on the top, just like what you see there. So we're trying to keep with that same style that we have. Questions so far?
Not so far.
What are you looking, so basically what we're asking for, and Patrick, you can jump in now. We have a variance, and we're looking for a continuation of the variance.
And that part's with the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Right.
As part of the Hamilton zoning bylaw, signage is with the planning board for site plan review. As part of that, I'm recommending to the board, because there's not square footage here, this is a replacement of an existing sign. There aren't parking impacts. There aren't the typical impacts that you get with a development project. I'm recommending to the board that you undertake, as you're well familiar with, an abbreviated site plan review.
Right.
Which is basically of the sign, only of the sign. In my opinion, this is 100% public information being provided to the public. It's changeable. It has a great deal of use, as this board well knows. We have many fellow boards, groups, and committees in the town that need to get messages out. Certainly, public safety is chief among them, at attempting to try to inform the public of the kinds of things that we need to, relative to parking bans, et cetera. So I think it's, they've worked to make this a tasteful contribution to the town. It's to go into the same location as the existing sign, so I recommend it heartily.
Yeah. How big is the that existing portable sign?
The portable sign?
Yeah, the portable.
yes.
48 inches.
square, or? roughly?
No, 48 across.
48 by, I think it could be 80, maybe? Okay. Because, I mean, that was one of my only questions was, is this big enough, do we think? I mean, and I know what our sign bylaw says, right, but I just want to make sure that, I mean, it's a big open area there, and right now you have a fairly small sign there, you almost miss it. I'm wondering if this is big enough for people that are driving by to really kind of see it and get a sense of it.
So,
I mean, I know it's about 6 feet long, but.
just let me make sure you've got these packets. If you open this packet here, and I just want to make sure it's the same packet, because I updated it to show you with the granite post, so let me do this one here.
Yeah.
And if you turn to you flip the page, on there, it'll show you diagrams. It also tells you at what footage you need to be away. It gives you the ride speed, or it gives you at what footage if you're just traveling distance from it. So to answer your question, Brian, I think where it says is minimum viewing distance is 25 feet.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be so big it doesn't fit into the village concept down there.
No, I know.
I just want it to be big enough that, you know, if you're traveling at the posted speed limit, you can actually see what's scrolling across.
Right.
You don't have to slow down to see what's scrolling around again. You can actually see it as you're traveling at the posted speed limit.
Right.
If you're doing it above the posted speed limit, you're not going to read the sign.
So you talk about it scrolling, so it's a moving sign instead of just,
So you can make it scroll. You can have it permanent like the one we have there now. You can do a lot of different things
well,
with the sign.
I was just warning about traffic safety if it is moving. And, you know, will people put their brakes on in order to try and wait to see the message as it comes across?
Oh, yeah.
I don't see that happening, but we don't have to make it scroll. It can just be a permanent. There was a lot of, with today's day and age of electronics, you can do a lot of different things with it.
Yep.
So it can be a permanent sign, meaning it could be a illuminate period. And we can have one message that's there, and then it comes off, and then a new message comes up. You can have a message that scrolls. If it's a short message and it's a repeating message, snow ban in effect. That could scroll and keep on scrolling, so you'd be able to see that when you're driving.
I think it draws your attention more, I guess, when it scrolls, right? So.
Everyone in town sees that sign, the portable sign, without a doubt. No one sees the sign that says public safety building.
Right.
And some people don't even know it's there. We just need a better way of getting the information out to the public. We put stuff on the website. When we do a snow ban in effect, we post it on the website. People don't go to the website to see a snow ban effect. If they see a sign and they're driving down the road, snow ban effect midnight tonight, they'll understand. It's just another way of getting information out.
I don't think there's any question that we need to do that. I was just asking to make sure it's big enough to get the information and that people can see it driving by. So that was one of my only concerns.
At a time.
Yeah, potentially several messages at a time, right?
And I can look into that more too. I want to make sure that it fits into the village. I don't want it to.
I do too, but I think there's a happy medium there. I'm not quite sure what it is. And one of the things I was going to say is maybe we put up a little board mock-up just to see what it looks like, where it's going to be and how big it's going to be, and make sure we can actually, I mean, it's a lot of money for a sign, so let's make sure it's right. And it's a fairly easy thing to do, just to make sure we can actually see it.
Yep, we can do that.
Do we have the,
Is the sign in Groveland the same size?
I don't know what the measurements are.
Okay.
yeah, that was my question. Do we know what the dimension is of the actual electronic sign?
It's right on there.
Like
Yep.
2 by 6 roughly.
The sign, the electronic sign itself is 2 by 6. So the electronic sign is 2 by 6. And 6 foot long, 2 feet high. And then the Hamilton, the front where it says Hamilton Fire, Hamilton Senior Center, that's 2 by 6.
Okay.
So the top portions are carved 2 by, just like we have there, carved inlay 2 by 6. And then the sign itself, the illuminated portion, is 2 by 6 as well.
Question, is the LED lighting adjustable, or is it fixed in its,
So the lumens, I don't know if the lumens are adjustable. The colors, you can adjust the colors. You don't have to have certain colors if you don't want to have certain colors.
Yeah.
So the colors are, I don't know if you can dial up the intensity or not. I can check on that.
okay. And just as a matter of interest for the people who are maybe watching this in the audience and at home, How will this be controlled if people, are these town messages only, or if somebody's having an event, let's say the Patton, well, that's a town event. I'm just thinking of other things like the Rotary was having an event or something like that, or the schools were doing a fundraiser, or I'm just trying to understand the parameters of.
So myself and the town manager have discussed this, that we're going to have to come up with a policy on what's going to go up there and what's not going to go up on that. Do we limit it to town events? There comes a point where you go too far.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a bake sale, don't forget your inspection stickers. I mean, it comes a point where you go too far.
Right.
So we look at this as a public safety message first, and then we look, like, we've had tree trimming. We had roads closed when we were doing tree trimming through town all the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
That's something that should be there.
Yeah.
Parking ban in effect, that's something that should be there. If it's high fire, fire department, if it's a high-risk fire times, that's something that should be on there. So we're going to have to talk about it, sit down with the town manager and draft up a policy as it pertains to that.
Yeah.
If I could offer, though, too, one of the things you want to consider is that there'll be times of the year when there's a whole bunch of town business that needs to go up there, and there'll be other slower times of the year. One of the things that makes a sign or a communication tool like this effective is that you always have something new there. So the policy will have to be sufficiently flexible to allow for some use of the sign by non-critical groups in times when there's not a lot of critical information to share, right? Occasionally, we might need to, so I think a kind of a prioritization of the types of messages. So if I know I have a whole bunch of things that the police and fire department or the public works department needs to get in, then I might not be able to, accommodate the Girl Scout troops, Girl Scout cookie drive at the crossing, right? But
Yeah.
in July, when there's nothing else going on, well, maybe we can.
So you can-
and there should be a kind of a scale for that,
And prioritize it.
based on the
Yeah.
need first, yeah.
Right, understood. I was just wondering, because there are some times that the planning board would be thinking it might be useful to advertise, for example, or.
If we promise you more criticality than the Girl Scouts do,
Well,
we get a
that's
good
what I'm
vote out of
thinking,
you.
is that you would have a priority of, public
Absolutely.
safety.
Absolutely.
Public information, and then, like, we're doing our online survey now,
Right.
or something like that.
And the online survey and advertising, the master housing meetings and things, I think those are perfect examples of the things that we should be able to put up there.
Okay, good.
Okay. Any other questions? Nope. Okay.
Very attractive.
So, does everybody think we need to do a quick little mock-up to see it out there or not? See if it's big enough?
I think the police and fire, the sign on top is
Yeah.
big enough.
Yeah.
I just don't know about the lettering, because I don't know whether those must be like 4 or 6 inch letters. So those specs that are in here that
Yep.
says it's viewable from 25 feet
Yeah.
Minimum.
That's the minimum.
relates to the electronic messages.
Correct.
Okay.
Font size you can change, and the color you can change.
Yeah.
So depending on the message,
Yeah.
6 feet.
No,
6 feet
understood.
is a long message.
No, I think looking at this message here,
It's
it's,
almost as big as your TV screen at home, right?
well, I'm still watching the old.
Oh, yeah, the black and white with the rabbit ears.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, 19-inch. No, I'm just looking at this, there's so much information on this, it's like hard to read, so I'm assuming that you would have less words.
So there's an existing one in Georgetown, and there's an existing one in Groveland.
Yeah,
So I can take a ride and measure those as well and see what those are, because
so it's comparable to this?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it'd be just interesting to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, Georgetown's right in front of the town hall, and they have a lot of different information that they put on that.
Yeah, and I think there might be one in Middleton too, but I'm not sure.
Middleton's in front of the library, I believe,
Yeah, okay.
and Groveland's in front of their town hall as well.
And how long, once you get approval, how long does this take to,
After you gentlemen, we've got to go in front of ZBA.
okay,
We have to do hearings, it has to be posted, and we're going to advertise it in front of ZBA. So we still have to get their approval first.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Patrick on the timing of this. When's the next CBA meeting? Because we need to post it for 2 weeks before we go to them, right?
Yeah, you probably cannot make the first Wednesday in March. It'll have to be the first Wednesday in April.
Okay, so I guess what I'd be asking is hopefully that your board can make a decision prior to the time that we
Yeah.
need to post for the first Wednesday in April.
So could you post it?
And then just withdraw it if you guys rule against us?
Right, right.
I'd rather not
Well,
do that. But yeah, we could certainly do
I
that.
mean, and again, I don't think any of us are against the sign. I just want to make sure that it's the right size.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think it's going to be smaller, right?
So how are we leaving this? What's going to happen next? You're going to go look at other
Well,
towns?
yeah, go measure those other signs or Groveland sign and see what it is, and maybe we don't need a 2x6 mock-up, but again, I just want to make sure it's the right size.
Do we want to put the address of the Bay Road on the, do we want to put the address of Bay Road? Do people look for that, drivers, when they're trying to find?
The police station?
Yeah. I don't know that everyone, I
Well-
mean, citizens do, but if someone's trying to look,
Actually, I think when you go, if you go online and you put in police or fire station, it tells you,
I know it does,
yeah.
but
Well, but I mean,
If you have-
if you're looking for the police fire station and the senior center, I mean, it's on the sign, right? Why do you need the address? If you know where you're going.
I'm not arguing it, I'm just asking.
No, I was just wondering, like, what the.
My thought process would be that having the benefit of the street address is helpful to motorists, just wayfinding purposes, to understand, well, I'm at 200 Bay Road or whatever.
I think the address is on the senior center, isn't it? There's something on there now.
Well, what we're trying to do is combine 3 signs into one. So the senior
Right.
center, which
Yeah.
is looking for a sign now, wouldn't be getting a sign because we're combining them into one.
Yeah, the senior center's
Yeah.
already been approved for a sign, and they have funds available to be able to build it and put it, erect it, but they've agreed to hold off while we, try to get this one approved. And if this one gets approved, they'll happily join in our effort, and that makes it a lot easier.
In all honesty, Patrick, I cannot recall whether we have the street numbers on the existing sign or not.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think so
And I've
either.
never heard a cry for it, though, either. I've never heard anyone once say, in almost 10 years I've been there, hey, I wish you had your street number on that sign. I mean, I haven't.
I mean, they don't drive up to the police station and say, is this the
Tell
police
you.
station at 289?
They don't see that little sign out there.
Okay. So I think the next step is we're going to wait to hear back from you as to your opinion on
Yeah, let me I'll take a ride down there.
the visibility. Okay. And then just a matter of process, they have to go back to the ZBA to get a variance?
Extension of the variance.
Extension of the
Existing
variance,
extension of
okay.
the existing variance.
Okay. How long was it? It's like 90 days or something? Their extension?
It's not a time
No,
extension, extension of the size. They have a variance now to have the sign they have, so we
Yeah.
want them to extend the variance to include an electric sign, as
Oh,
opposed to
okay.
just the static sign
Got
that
it.
they have.
Thank you.
So we'll come back. I'm going to go, I'll
Back
take some
on the
measurements.
5th
I'll talk to the powers to be in Georgetown and Groveland and find out if they think their signs are adequate, the size that they are.
Yeah.
And come back to you.
So in
The other thing
theory,
is, this would have to go to bid, so a little bit of flexibility on the sign might be needed from you folks in the ZBA, because when we go out to bid, I can't just say it has to be this sign, because then I'm kind of potentially precluding somebody from bidding on it. So I need to say this sign or similar as approved. So, if you could approve,
Within a certain-
within a certain range, that would help us on the bidding aspect, as well as, your comfort level with if the sign's big enough.
Okay.
so in theory, you come back in 2 weeks and let us know what the response is, and then you could get to, assuming we approve it, that you could then go to ZBA.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Sean.
you.
We appreciate it.
Good, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Some master planning update. I know you sent an email, like, basically as I was driving here tonight about, that I didn't look at yet, about an update from our last meeting at the library.
Yeah, the consultants have had the ability to prepare a report based on what the effort of the folks was on February the 5th. That was basically our first public forum regarding housing. We had about 30 people there, had a lot of good input. They've taken that down. They've documented it in a report. I'll also put that on the town website tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Have you had a chance to look at it or not?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah, I did notice that what they did was they took the information that each of the different tables had prepared, and they've placed that into the report as a way of basically showing what individual opinions were out of those groups.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question, Patrick, on one of your emails. They sent the demographic report, the first report that you and I both reviewed, and I think you had a comment, is it's still being edited?
It's still being edited. I was told that I should be getting that this week.
Okay.
So as soon as I do, I'll send that out. It still may need more editing. But I think it's useful to put it on the town website so people can see the benefit of the work that we've done so far. There's a lot of information that's been put together in it that I think is valuable.
Okay.
I could ask, there's some people that have said it's not really the assessor's data, but we're using someone who's reviewed other statistics about the town. So do we know it's really the stock of housing that we have? I'm just confused by that. I thought they were going to really evaluate all the building sizes and types from the assessors.
They have been coordinating some with the assessors to get basic data. Multifamily, singles, doubles, etc., but I don't think they've gotten into excruciating detail.
It was the multifamily that really confused me. They have a large number of apartment buildings. I don't know where they are in town, frankly.
Yeah.
I just don't think they're there.
Yeah, I found that a bit curious, too.
Yeah. There was one other thing that happened at the forum. At the end of it, I was told that somebody had requested housing on Asbury Grove, and then I was told that that person knew that definitively, and I'm not going to name any names or anything, but definitively that there was land to build housing at the Grove. I questioned that, and no, it was. I was told it was true, and I was told that the religion question at the Grove has the right to interview potential residents as to their religious affiliation. I don't know the details, but at any rate, I was told that that could be bypassed if the town wished to build on that property. So I contacted the business manager at the Grove, and she sent me an email back, which is in front of you. You can read it. But first of all, there is no free land at the Grove. It's under the governing of the Conference of the Methodist Church. As an aside, which really wouldn't affect us, but could. But if for some reason the Grove organization went defunct, that land would be returned to the Methodist Church. Now, what the Methodist Church does with it, that may put it in the play of the market, but that's a whole other question. And to quote Mrs. Wolkin, Mrs. Wolkin, when interviewing prospective buyers, we're allowed to question them on their religious faith and make a decision to let them buy or not buy based on the interview. which basically means that the religion question cannot be bypassed. So I had asked I sent an email to the person who gave me the original information, and I verified that that was indeed what I was told it was. And then I was told that it was actually the spouse that had more information. I asked the spouse to, by email, to contact me with something definitive so I could have it in my hand, and I never heard back. But as far as I know, and the Grove, their understanding is, A, there's no land to be built on, and B, the religion issue cannot be bypassed.
I've had some communications with the Grove, and it's still up in the air. So I don't think it's as definitive and cut and dried as...
Well, it's right here in writing, Peter, so please, I'm not naming any names, but please, I would...
Why don't you just let things go for a little bit, and we'll see whether it turns out...
I'd like to have some proof from the people that are doing that.
Well, it's a non-issue right now.
Right.
Yeah, it's a non-issue.
There's nothing before them,
Yeah.
before us, so.
But it's just that people bring that up,
No, I
and
understand.
We bring up a lot of things.
I know.
You know,
No,
so
it's actually helpful that you ran that to ground,
Yeah.
and so we'll leave it at that until we hear something definitively different from the people that have the authority to speak for the
absolutely,
Grove.
that's fine.
Anything else on the master plan update?
The next one is March 20th, right?
That's correct.
So we ought to start thinking about
Try and get more people out.
how to get more people out.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
So I don't know if the sign will still be available that's out there, but we might want to see if we can get an announcement there, again, get an article in the Chronicle. I'm wondering if we can also ask the schools to do another
Yeah. Yeah.
email, since it will be very specific to that, and
Shouldn't be a
maybe
problem.
like no more than 10 days, not too far in advance, so they don't forget.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's, obviously, everything we did before, all the, another newspaper article, I think would be helpful, or two, town website, all the social media, and then, honestly, it's just, talking to people that you
Yep.
run into and spreading it that way. That's really, I think, how,
I did
that's the way to do it. It's-
contact the consultants today, and they told me that we have 527 survey responses so far.
Yeah. Okay, that was great. We obviously got a really good push at the beginning there and had, a few hundred fairly quickly. It's obviously winding down. When is it done?
Let's see, March, yeah, early March.
Okay.
And the senior
Yeah.
center got paper copies, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the scans that I've been sending. I've been trying to get copies to the board as well, just so you have the benefit of seeing some of the actual commentary that's come in on some of the surveys, which I think is really interesting and useful. One of the things that really stuck out to me today was the fact that one of the respondents today was really supportive of the idea of having more pedestrian accessible housing for seniors. You look at most houses, they are on multiple stairs or steps before you enter into the house. It's not always easy for elders to negotiate that. So I get their point.
Right. No, agreed. Okay, great, thank you.
And I'll do some more posting on Facebook, the two big town things, and see if
Yeah.
bring new enthusiasm for that.
Let's
we
make
gotta
sure-
wait a little bit.
Yeah, we want to wait a little bit, just so, so we have multiple things happening at the same time.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, maybe start the
Start late.
second first or second week of March.
Yeah, start 10 days before.
Yep.
12 days before.
Have everything hitting 10 to 12 days before.
Right.
So they
So
can't avoid it.
When's it going to end?
Well, no, I'm talking about the meeting.
I'm
March
talking about
20th meeting.
I'm talking about the survey.
Oh, well, yeah, that you can keep posting,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
fine.
Definitely.
No, I was talking about more the meeting.
No,
Okay.
no, the other one, the next forum, that's not till March 5th, I think.
March 20th.
20th.
20th? Oh,
Yeah.
Way
Yeah.
out.
Okay. Bylaws?
All right, what I have included in your packages are 3 proposed bylaws. Actually, the first, which is regarding inclusionary housing, I think is pretty close to final form. I've sent that to town council. She's looking at it. There's another one regarding proposed signage, which town council Donna Brewer actually prepared. She said there were some issues with our existing signage bylaw, so she did some tweaks on it. Plus, she added the idea and the ability to allow for yard signs. There was one question that she wanted to have folks respond to, which you see it's under 6.3.2, number 1. Residence districts. She wanted to know whether or not the board wanted to limit yard signs to 1 sign for an assemblage of ownership or 1 per lot, which I think it'd be hard to really follow 1 per lot because no building inspector's going to be on a site looking at lot lines. But
Right.
Brian, you brought up a useful comment regarding the fact that, a family may have different kids going to different schools, both of which are multiple ones that may have events going on at the same time.
Right, so yeah, just some mechanism to allow for, a short period of time, multiple signs. And maybe you cap it at 3 or something, but, just some way that, people do it now, there's just no enforcement of it. It's just, you see 2 or 3
Right.
signs during certain events for, a week or 2, just to get the word out, and then they're gone. I know political signs are different, but just, event signs, I think we just need to have something in there that allows, 2 or 3 signs for, a week on either side of an event or something, or 2 weeks before an event, something like that. And the one bylaw that I had found, I can't remember who it was now, but it had some language in there that was pretty specific about temporary signs like that were, it was like 2 weeks before the event and then taken down right after the event. So it was pretty simple.
That's kind of like a going out of business sale sign. You can do it for a couple, 3 weeks, maybe a month ahead of time, but right after
Right.
that sale, it's got to be down.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I mean, other than that, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Okay. Good. The other bylaw I've been tinkering with has been the microcell bylaw. I'm having some difficulty in getting opinions that work together enough to allow me to create new language
Right.
or distill existing. So I think that, we need to work through that a little bit.
I mean, you've been working with Dan, who's not here tonight, and
Right.
Donna Brewer on it.
And her point is that we implicitly have to have the language that addresses recent FCC rulings that took place just a few months ago, no question.
Right.
And I know that some of the ones that we've been looking at do, and some of them don't. And I haven't read the 177 pages closely enough to know which one does what.
Right.
So I'm going to have to borrow some more of Dan Ham's time and some more of town council's time so we can get something together and get it to this board. I do think that we need to have our bylaws hearings on the 19th, which doesn't give us a whole lot of time. That's, you know, one and done. One hearing and done for each of the different things that we're pursuing on that night, unless, of course, we wanted to come back for a special follow-up meeting the following week, which hopefully wouldn't be the case, but that's where we're at.
Okay, when is town meeting this year?
The first Saturday in April, that would be.
6th.
Yeah.
Okay. What was I going to say? Yeah, I guess, you know, keep working with Dan on that, and I know, you know, one of Donna's main points, I don't know if you guys have heard, is that we tried to incorporate this into our existing cell tower bylaw. She's like, no, it really shouldn't work that way. So we're just creating basically a brand new bylaw for microcell only. So that's kind of the reason why this has gotten a little more complicated than it was initially. So, and like you said, it needs to incorporate that FCC language that's fairly recent. So, and one of the things you pointed out today was that language, the FCC ruling, specified that these can be on public right-of-ways or private land, right?
Right.
Basically.
Right, and that's, you know, one of the bylaws that Dan felt most strongly about using was Worcester's, and they're a city, number one, and number two, they were exclusively directing the use of that technology in the public right-of-way. You know, if we constrained it to only public right-of-way here in town, that'd be what, 40% of our roads here, which is, you know, 1A and Bridge and a half a dozen others, really.
Well, I mean, any town road is a public road, right? I mean, it depends on how they're defining it, but I mean, they're saying, I mean, from what I thought it said, is that they're saying they can come in and put this on someone's property, right, or not?
In that Worcester text, it was specifically on public right-of-way.
Well, that one was, yes, but the FCC ruling.
Yeah, in my opinion, it allows for it on private property, public property, private ways, public ways, all four.
Right. I mean, private property, though, you'd have to get the permission.
Yeah,
of the owner.
So
that's a lease or a sales.
Right. It's just like a cell tower, yeah.
Exactly right.
basically, though, the location is going to be primarily dictated by the density of users in that specific area. So
That's
it'll only
right.
be in private property if it's close to a lot of traffic, for example.
That's exactly right. That's going to dictate largely where they go.
Yeah.
But then you have to think in terms of how our bylaw, you know, that's existing relative to cell towers and cell equipment. We've been trying to focus those that technology on public property. So we may need to think in terms of tweaking that language to recognize we don't always have property for that use in the right locations.
Yeah,
Say,
right.
for instance,
That's right.
at the shopping center is entirely privately owned. That might be the best location in all of town. They have light poles, other kinds of things that could accommodate.
Well, the one that Mobility wanted to do was fairly close to the shopping center.
Yeah,
And
exactly right.
There's a lot of traffic right there. It's a
Right.
major intersection.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we'll take that up next time.
All right, more to come on that.
Okay.
The next item under bylaws and such, and I know Stacy and some of her neighbors are here for it, is regarding a board discussion on street acceptance policy. We've been talking about it for quite some time. The board voted, a couple, 3 months ago, to basically advise the Board of Selectmen that the town not extend a street acceptance policy, and correct me if I'm wrong, and to allow for private property owners to pursue all processes that would be required in order to take private roads into consideration for public acceptance. There's a big, long process. You have to survey. You have to have it engineering evaluated. You have to have the roadway standards relative to design, dimension, how it was constructed, becomes the what the town has to look at and consider relative to what future costs are going to be. So for that reason, given the fact that these are typically unintended or unanticipated projects, this board has voted to not accept private ways for town acceptance. The majority of subdivisions that come to us, common driveway applications, et cetera, all have private ways associated with them. They have been typical as part of developers' applications to the board. There have been some exceptions over time, but the board has recommended to the Board of Selectmen that we not have the existing town roadway acceptance policy, but if a new one was to be created, that for all the responsibility to go with the property owners of that particular right-of-way. Did I say that right?
I think that's right.
Sounded right to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes I do remember.
Okay, so what are we doing?
Well, question from Mark.
If I may, Mark Johnson, exactly on that topic. So William Mead, about 4 years ago, had water line replaced. And the water line was an asbestos tile that was common at the time, but it was something that it cost the town $500,000, and the infrastructure that the town replaced was private way infrastructure, private way water pipes, not put in by the town. And this type of street acceptance, if it had been built to town standards, then and they can demonstrate it, great. But that one street cost the town $500,000. That should have been on the landowners. The town voted to do it, but it's exactly the type of costs that are hidden in the infrastructure of accepting a private way that wasn't improved to the same standard. I just wanted to put a concrete example out there.
Thank you. So the Board of Selectmen wanted to have the board discuss it and evaluate the policy that you've had for a while now. This was the policy that this board actually picked out of a half a dozen various roadway acceptance policies from other communities, and we did send this to the Board of Selectmen. They've refined it. They've taken out any references to other communities. Now it's specific to the town of Hamilton. So the Board of Selectmen would like to have a recommendation from the planning board relative to if this is something that you would recommend to them and to the town.
Well, we can't now because we lost our quorum.
Yeah. Right.
So, but we can certainly hear comment, yeah.
I don't know the right time to get it.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So, hi, my name is Stacy Verge. I'm at 43 Berrywood Lane. So first, we did start down this process a number of years ago. It got stalled. Tons of paperwork was lost, misplaced. I have memos from Bill Redford saying he received it all, but then it all went missing. So it's been a bit of a shambles trying to complete it all. No blame, just in general. But I wanted to speak a little specifically to the issue with plowing and trash pickup. First of all, I watched the Board of Selectmen meeting, the last one, don't know the date off the top of my head, and I noticed that someone on the planning board mentioned that we all knew what we got into when we bought on a private way, and I need to say I went back and read my deed, which I bought a copy of. It doesn't say anywhere it's a private way. I have lived in my house and refinanced twice, so I have 3 appraisals. All 3 independent appraisers that had nothing to do with me checked public way on my appraisal. I feel frustrated. I worked with 3 different lawyers. All 3 banks had lawyers working for them. That's 6 lawyers involved. No one mentioned a private way. So I don't know what, as a regular citizen, I put my faith in these people that I paid a lot of money to get the information for me. I'm not blaming the town, clearly, but I did not know what I got into, and I've spoken to a number of my neighbors who bought houses, especially in recent years. I don't know what happened almost 50 years ago, but who did not know that they were buying on a private way. There's no sign. The town has plowed and picked up trash for almost 50 years. It's not new. We're not a new subdivision that knew it. Again, it's not in any of our deeds. I looked up, I didn't know I could do this. I looked up other neighbors' deeds as well. None of it wasn't in there. It's frustrating for me. Again, I think it makes sense for subdivisions going forward, but I mean, I live on a street with 15 people. We have no homeowners association. I have no idea how we would come together and make this happen. Trying to become, as Patrick can attest to, trying to become a public road was a nightmare, trying to get the neighbors to work together. I cannot foresee us plowing our road, and I'm scared. I mean, I don't know how the police would get there. It seems like a bit of a public safety issue. I know when it was discussed back in 2014 with the selectmen, sorry, I need glasses, I'm getting old. The board agreed to continue plowing if we met, and there's a list of conditions, signing or releasing liability, I believe, that sort of thing. And I'm sure we'd be happy to meet those conditions going forward, but I'm just, we will continue to pursue, if it's an option, to pursue becoming a public road in whatever way that we can, if it's an option. But I don't know that this is a huge deal for people that have been plowed, and I did not foresee this happening at all. Again, there's no way that I could have when I purchased my house. And I'm happy to provide, I'll look at my deed because you can see it, but I will show you my 3 appraisals. It's not mentioned anywhere. So, yes.
Are all of these ladies your neighbors on the same street?
No, but I met some of them. They were lovely, but I don't know them.
Okay. All right.
I'm friendly.
I don't live on
No, she's a friend.
But I also would.
If you're going to talk,
you have to talk at the microphone. And
Am I good? I'm good.
Address.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well,
You,
a
give
couple
your
of.
name and address, please.
Okay, my name is Jane Kusel. I live on 591 Essex Street. I'm a friend of a person who lives on a private way. And with respect to the change in the road acceptance procedures, So back in the original ones that are in existence, it identified certain roads that are private ways that were granted waivers or were built to be private ways. And then there were identified like 5 or 6 roads that were intended to meet public way standards, which Berrywood Lane is one of those. And changing the procedures now without grandfathering in some of these identified roads that were intended to be public or meet the public standards, I think would be an unfair situation, particularly since they tried to pursue the public road acceptance and all the paperwork got lost and, all these things happened and it wasn't an easy process for them. So if the standards are to be changed, I think that certain roads should be grandfathered in and given a right to become a public way. And also that there should be an identification as to whether there's a way for snow plowing and trash to continue on these roads for the ones that have been receiving those services for a number of years. And so,
Before you go, what road is your friend on?
Berrywood Lane.
Okay.
So I don't think from my reading of this, and I may be wrong, and correct me if I am, this is addressing people who want to become a public way. So I wasn't a party and don't have a lot of knowledge on what you were trying to do before, but it sounds like you were trying to become a public way.
Yes.
Okay, so that's all good. This just spells out what the rules and responsibilities are for you and other people to make that happen. The problem, as I understand it, is just a lack of clarity that everybody's been struggling with in terms of there wasn't a clear policy. So, and we were tasked with coming up with a clear policy, said, well, if people that live on a private way want to become a public way, here's the process and procedures to make that happen, and and allocating the costs and expenses of making that happen. So for those who have enjoyed town services, but not a designated public way, I'm not sure we're not there. We're not responsible for that, and I know that you'll look at us and say, well, who is? Well, that's a determination that I believe the Board of Selectmen have to make. They asked for a policy. We talked about and discussed what was in place or what wasn't in place and said we really need to have something that's very clear, easy to read, and is a roadmap for public citizens who would want to have a public way become a private way become a public way. So that's what this is about.
Are those publicly available?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Is it increasing the burden on the citizen?
Well, what it does is it completely says if you live on a private way and you want to become a public way, it's your responsibility and at your cost to make that happen. The town is not going to share in that cost. That's always been the rub back and forth is nobody was willing to make, or every time it seemed to change, and you can probably attest to this, is every time you talk to somebody it was different. Everybody had a different interpretation. So what we're trying to do is standardize it and say, if you want to become a public way, and you're now a private way, this is the process and procedures to make it happen, and it's your responsibility to build to these standards in order to have an accepted way.
So back in April 15th, 2015, when we were working on this with Patrick, at that time it was designated that abutters were to pay 50% of the cost of the improvement. So now you're switching it to 100%.
That's the existing policy that's still in effect right now.
Okay, so you're moving 100% of that cost now.
Right. So, and again, we're not determining who and how that happens. I'm guessing, but I'm not speaking officially for anybody except myself, is if you were in the process of doing it under the old rules and regulations and then you would, and you're in process, then you would continue to do that, and that existing policy would be the governing policy.
Right. It seems fair for subdivisions seeking approval up front, but for subdivisions.
Well, they would always.
Without approval.
Just to clarify, a subdivision always would have to build to these standards. It's not like we're suddenly imposing a new standard on them.
Right, but you're imposing a new standard on the homeowner.
We're imposing,
A higher cost.
Well, what we're doing is imposing a standard that will, yes, cost existing homeowners who live on a private way, who wish to become a public way, will have to pay the full cost of doing that.
Right, whereas now it would be just 50%.
Correct. Correct. But the selectmen, as far as I know, have determined they do not wish to continue that, and they asked us to make a recommendation to clarify what the policies and procedures would be. So that's what we discussed and voted on, and we're now talking about adopting this specific language.
And I just would like to ask that certain properties be grandfathered in for the 50%.
Well, again, that's not our call. That becomes really, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's the Board of Selectmen, because they're the ones that determine, that's the body that, makes that decision.
Right.
So, from my perspective, is they said they wanted clarity and they didn't want to continue to carry that cost. They wanted and so that's what they said to us, please come up with a policy that gives clarity and shifts the burden to the homeowners wishing to living on a private way, wishing to become a public way. So I get it. I understand completely. So at some point, somebody's got to say there's a cutoff. There's a delineation of where this begins and where.
Right. I'm fine with that. I just feel like.
But I'm not, and we're not.
Moving the cutoff to punish those who were already working under the existing rules.
Right.
And we're trying to pursue those rules.
Right. So, and I don't disagree with you. I mean, I'd say the same thing if I had made a good faith effort to try and make that happen under the existing rules. I'd say, hey, I've done my homework and I've demonstrated, intent, and I've got the documentation. I would be saying the same thing. So that's a case that I think needs to be made to the Board of Selectmen. Okay. So,
don't go, please. I've got a couple more along the line of logistics. Roughly what time frame were the various houses on Berrywood Lane built, and who is the builder?
I can't answer that.
I know that I don't have any idea.
60s, right?
Builder was what?
Yeah,
that's okay.
In the 1970s, I don't have anything more specific. I'm sorry, I didn't know you'd ask.
So all the houses are basically built around 1970 to 80.
Yeah, early, like 72, pretty early in the 70s.
Okay.
It's probably in my deed.
Pardon?
It might be in my deed.
Yeah. One of the earlier builders of some of the houses in an earlier time frame was a guy named Martell. Does that mean anything to you?
No, I'm sorry. I couldn't
I know who
even.
you're talking about. It wasn't.
Yeah.
No.
Wasn't him? Okay.
And the subdivision was 1972.
1972? Okay, thanks. And why was the road not built to town standards at that time?
It says that it was, but it wasn't. No, really, that's what, if you read, they were.
No, I understand. Now, just so you guys know, we're much more specific about that. And they actually, with a new subdivision, the applicant/builder has to post a bond that they will build to a publicly accepted standard, and if they don't, then the town calls in the bond, and the town will build it using the bond money to the standards that were supposed to be met. Some, unfortunately, you and we are caught in that sort of twilight zone of like, zoning was becoming more specific, and we're now being much more specific because we don't want to go forward and say, well, first of all, we wouldn't allow it to happen now. So that's cut off. But we're just trying to limit all the future possibilities coming before the town and saying, hey, the builder was supposed to build it, but he didn't, and now we're finding out, and we want you guys to rectify that problem. And so we're kind of going like, well, you know, how do we do that?
I hear that. I feel like I'm also, it's just kind of a victim of, again, not having any idea what I purchased at the time, and now knowing all the town services that I know everyone throws, I pay a ton of taxes, we all do, but I don't think I pay less than anyone else, and to have my town services taken away because I'm not suddenly on a, like, what just happened? It's just, it's scary and frustrating, and
I think we have a town official here.
Oh, hi.
DPW director.
Oh, hi, Tim, good to see you.
All right, Tim Olson, DPW Director. It appears that Stacy is more concerned with the services on the private roads.
Sorry, what was the first?
I said Tim Olson, DPW Director.
No, I got that. You said somebody's concerned.
Stacy.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we are looking, Joe, the town manager, and myself are looking at the private roads in a little bit more detail after this winter season. So I know trash as well as plowing is a big, it involves a lot. We do a lot of private roads in town that do qualify under the existing bylaw that we have, but we're going to take a little closer look at that bylaw to make sure that it's written correctly. If there's any other recommendations, we're going to put a pretty good effort forward. So we welcome any input you have during that time. But right now we're plowing the roads that we are for this winter, that we've continued to plow. But we are looking at, I think, looking at the bylaw with any recommendations that we do have probably for a fall town meeting next year. Or this coming, later this year, I guess, to give anybody enough time to hire a private plow company or something like that. So that's what the kind of time frame is.
So I'm assuming that you have a list of public ways, private ways, right? And has that all been gone through fairly recently, or some of the ones in question potentially, right?
So our list, yes. Our list, I think it's pretty accurate on the private ways and public ways. The current list that we do plow has been through, since I've been here. I've only been here 2 years, but I've looked at it, and the majority of the roads do qualify for that bylaw. There are a couple that we're looking at that we want to make sure that their deed restrictions are the issues, and a lot of the roads do have restrictions on plowing and maintenance of roadways. So that's something that we will be in front of the planning board, I'm sure, in the future. But we are continuing to plow the roads that we have. With our manpower that we have, we can keep up with those roads. But it's harder and harder to find plow drivers. And so we need to look a little closer at that bylaw to make sure it makes sense, everything's covered, and probably would have something to do with any restrictions on those subdivisions. So. Not saying, I'm not going to say we're going to plow this and that at this point, but we're going to have some recommendations to put forward. So.
Sorry, Tim, feedback to you and Joe, or feedback to the board?
Yeah, a lot of the feedback would be the condition of the roadway. How I'm looking at condition, surface, length, width is a big deal. If there's a cul-de-sac or a turnaround at the end, I look at the safety of our plow drivers more than anything. If the road's wide enough and long enough and there's an adequate turnaround so they don't need to back out a truck in the middle of a snowstorm. Long hours, they need as much turnaround and space as needed. So those are things that I'm looking more at the physical aspects of the road. If it's in good shape, if there's any issues with the condition of the pavement, big potholes or some that could be damaging to our plow equipment. But then we're going to take a look at the individual, how many houses are on it, and if there's petitions and things like that, which has been in the past. We just want to make sure we're looking at that bylaw in a little bit more detail, and then offering suggestions on, if there needs to be any additional criteria.
Any other questions? Oh. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I just
yes,
wanted to...
please get up to the microphone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I
I'm Beth McLeod. I live on 4 Bancroft Way. I'm here with 2 other neighbors.
Would you say that again slowly, please?
Yes, I'm Beth McLeod, and I live on Bancroft Way, along with Susan and Ann, who's just moved into our street. So we're a private way, 4 homes. And, well, we've been going back and forth on this for a number of years. I've been here speaking with the town manager, who assured me that there would be a survey conducted to see which private ways would be deemed safe to plow, that there were issues with safety, just, you know, what you were speaking. I think I spoke with you as well at that meeting. And I was assured that although this winter our street wouldn't be plowed, if it was deemed safe to plow, it would be on the list for next year. When I moved into the house, some 14 years ago, our street was plowed routinely. It's a private way. I knew that when I purchased the house, but I was assured that we'd be getting this service. It's been going like that for years. And then maybe 5 years ago, we were told that the street wouldn't be plowed anymore, which, you know, we had to basically hire a plow. We looked into having our street accepted as a public way, but it would have been pretty prohibitive for us to do that because we're 4 houses on this street. And I guess what's confusing to me is how a contractor can come in and build these homes and get by all of these regulations and build these homes and walk away, and we're stuck with the burden of making the street a public way. I'm assuming if our houses catch on fire, the fire department's going to come and put out the fire. We have a turnaround, you know, it's a doable street. It's not a dangerous street. And yet, for these routine things, we were expected to pay for these services on top of paying taxes like anybody else in this town. So it's frustrating because we've been going back and forth for years, and I just recently got this assurance. Yes, we're going to make sure this is a safe street. If it's safe, it'll be plowed. And then this, are we not to get trash pickup?
There's 2 different things. These are 2 different things, though. The, you know, updating the road acceptance policy is completely different than continuing to plow and get trash, from what Tim just said. So it's, I just want to make that clear. That you may still get plowing and trash.
As a private way?
Yes, completely disregarding this policy, yeah.
Okay.
Potentially.
So what you're advising is that if we want to make our street a public way, that's going to be, that cost is something that we have to pick up.
Yes.
But in terms of these services, what does that mean?
Again, that's out of our hands, is the planning board. That is with DPW and the selectmen.
DPW and the selectmen will make that decision.
In terms of you continuing to get services or not, yes.
Right.
Okay.
Now, it's a little confusing because they are related in some way, but.
Yeah, is it possible to get a policy so this isn't going back and forth? I mean, I would like to know what the implications are of being a private way then.
Right, well, and that's where the rub is, because it's sort of like for whatever reason, maybe you know or maybe you don't know, somebody decided in the distant past that plowing and trash would be done on a private way. That wouldn't happen today, just because everybody would understand that. You know, in the nice good old days, it was pay, sure, why not? Now that policy is coming to rub up against the things that the DPW director was talking about. Well, the road's degrading, and, you know, it's like, well, geez, how, it's not our road, but we were doing this as a courtesy, I guess. Who knows how that ever started? So it's trying to back that out and figure out how to make that work. So as Brian said, going forward, if the road, if homeowners want to make it a public way, and it's got to be built to certain standards, and it's the homeowner's responsibility. For those, as we said before, for those who are in the process or have been negotiating with the town, well, the town's going to have to figure out, is it going to apply the old policy, 50% of the homeowners and 50% of the town, or not? We're not a party to that decision. We have a policy that they've asked us to try and draft for future street conversions, not existing. So the plowing and garbage issue is really a DPW, selectman, and town manager issue. So two separate. So it's, and I understand your concern, but we don't, we just don't deal with town services. We deal with town policy and bylaws, and we're trying to be clear about, in the future, here's what's going to happen if a homeowners on a private way want to become a public way.
And where would this discussion, when's the next discussion taking place for this? There will be a forum, I assume, with the selectmen, so that, or is this a private?
Well, I don't know, probably at our next meeting.
Well, so to be clear about what happened here is that, the selectmen essentially came to us and said, look, we need to revise this policy or have a real policy that's clear. Can you please come up with something, which we did, that they've tweaked a little bit and now sent back to us for hearings on it, which will happen, when's the date of that? Patrick, what's the date of the hearing that it would be for this?
Actually, this is going to be with the Board of Selectmen.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah, this board is only making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. This, and they will have their discussions on it, come to their recommendations, and then it will go to town meeting, as I understand it.
All right.
So it will be with the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
So stay tuned, look at the town website, look for agendas to make sure you're aware of when it comes up next for discussion. I imagine it will be in the next month or so, but we're not the people that schedule for that.
Okay.
Feel free to contact me, or Stacy can contact me, and I can get back with folks.
Okay.
Give you an update on what I see from where the
Yeah,
Board
I
of
wasn't
Selectmen
even
are.
aware that the town would assume 50% of the cost to try to make a private way into a public way. That's news to me.
Yeah, that's been the case since '99.
A long time.
Huh. Okay. All right.
Question, is there a list somewhere of the private roads in Hamilton? Is there access?
I think the clerk has that.
Yeah, the clerk has that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I got it from.
Okay, thank you.
Do you folks all know how to find agenda for the various meetings and when the meetings are? You know where the calendar is on the town website? Okay.
Hi, Barb Hesselwich, 3 Patton Ridge. Seems like I'm a little bit late to the party. I want some clarification about something that you said early on in the discussion. You said something about the planning board voted approximately 3 months ago for the town not to extend street acceptance to private ways. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
This board did make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen that the existing policy regarding street acceptance be eliminated and not continued. The Board of Selectmen then believed, we have to have something. We have to have a policy, even if it's to say the responsibility is with the property owners. Okay. So they then sent back that comment to the planning board, and that's what the planning board is reacting to, is a policy that the Board of Selectmen have accepted and refined and sent back to this planning board. We're cogitating on an opinion. We can't come to a vote tonight because we no longer have the quorum. As soon as we do, I suspect the board will take it back up, discuss it again, and then their collective opinion will go to the Board of Selectmen, who will then advance it.
Okay, so that was part of the discussion on February 4th of the board, kind of the joint Board of Selectmen meeting, and yeah, some planning board members there as well.
Well, that meeting Brian and I were at, and we had sent essentially this document to them. They said they liked it, but what they were concerned with, it didn't address the infrastructure under the road. They, they wanted to make sure that in the engineering design and upgrade that included any kind of water or underground utilities were also upgraded at the same time. So that's basically what they sent back to us, new language, including that in this policy.
So just so I'm clear, so you make a recommendation to the board. Ultimately, the board has the decision to approve the policy.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
Is there, again, I live in Patton Ridge, is there anything in this policy that would prohibit us from, if we so chose to go down that path, to become a public way?
No.
Okay.
Nope. It just lays out how to make it happen.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Well, actually, didn't they have in the Patton Ridge permit, special permit, the whole that it was going to be a private way and so on and so forth?
Yeah, there are requirements within their special permit that that property be privately maintained in perpetuity.
Okay. How does that differ from someone else that's not a private way?
Yeah, it's part of a planning board decision which is specific to that area and didn't follow the ordinary subdivision requirement standards for roadway development, design, etc.
So again, I want some clarification on this issue. Would we qualify to convert our private?
No.
You are saying
Probably
no.
not, because, again, it was a special permit. It wasn't a typical subdivision.
Correct.
And as part of that, the roadway design was constrained geometrically because of a limited land area.
The road is 24 feet wide.
Well, the right-of-way has to be more, there have to be other kinds of features as part of it. And I think it was constrained partially because of the environmentally sensitive areas immediately next to the development's property, is, you know, how the engineers had portrayed it to this board when the board approved it back in 15.
Okay, so again, I'm trying to clarify. So if initially you said, yes, we would be able to go down this route. Now you're saying...
If you could use these. But as both Patrick and Brian have said, the special permit conditions specifically state that it's a private way and the homeowners association will be created and it's in your deed.
No, I understand. I understand what's in the deed. I'm just saying, I'm trying to understand.
No, I understand. I'm trying to explain. And specifically says it is the responsibility of the homeowners association for all plowing, trash, et cetera, pickup services. And it was done specifically to address and prevent this kind of confusion, that because this was a special permit and it was granting density that is beyond what is normally allowed and other things to happen on that piece of property, it included in there specific language that is now recorded with the Registry of Deeds that says it is the homeowners association responsibility to manage all services to that. So that would prevent you from, or prevent that from happening. You could appeal to the town and say, well, we recognize we signed documentation and we recognize our responsibilities, but we still want you to do something. Well, that's a decision they would have to make.
Okay.
Well, actually, that there was, well, excuse me, what was the name of your street again?
Bancroft.
Bancroft. What is it off of?
Gardner Street.
Okay, I think it was Bancroft. You've got a real steep incline. Yeah, it's Bancroft. Remember, they came in front of the board and asked specifically to have it become a public way and or be plowed. I don't remember which. I think it was to become a public way. And Jeff was chair, and Jeff said, no, can't do it because it's in your permit or whatever the document is that you will privately maintain that, and it's a private way in perpetuity. So,
Well, yeah, and we're talking about two different things a little bit here, is that you live in a condominium development.
Correct.
Right.
And these other ones, like Bancroft and Berrywood, are ways that are private ownership off of them with a certain right-of-way dimension, whatever that is. And I think that's the difference. And most in those were done as a subdivision, whereas yours was a senior housing special permit. So I think that's the difference. At least in my mind, it is. That it's not your typical way.
So physically, Patton Ridge is really close. You know, the width is funny, but the depth of the gravel, you know, they came in with a very high standard of depth of gravel that you normally didn't see on a lot of the private ways done in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Right. Yeah, no, they built that road to a standard that, you know, very well may be acceptable and very well may be what most are. I just don't remember off the top of my head exactly what it was, but I think it's not just that, but it's also just what it is. It's condominium development, and, you know, I can't think of another one that's public around here anyway.
Right, and that was the specific, just so everybody's clear, that was the specific intent of the special permit, and is the specific to Canterbrook as well, the new, that's being built down the street from you guys, 23 units of condominium housing. Again, the town wanted to be very specific in the special permit and say it is your responsibility for your own services. So
when you're referencing the deed, are you talking about the master deed that is filed?
Yes.
The master deed for the condominium association? Okay.
Yeah, the master deed and any conditions that were on the special permit itself.
Right, and so deeds can be amended, because we have actually amended already for generator use in our development. So I guess when you say there are deed restrictions, you know, those can be amended.
They can. The special permit conditions, though, would have to come back to us to be amended.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand that, because again, like I said, I feel like I'm a little bit late to the party because of, you know, what has taken place since we approached the town.
It's actually confusing, because you've got 2 or 3 or 4 different ways that a property can be developed, and each one would have different means of getting the process done. Yours is a condominium. I don't know what Bancroft Way was. I don't remember that. Berrywood sounds like it was a subdevelopment, and Canterbrook is a special permit again. And Canterbrook, I think, is also doing their own trash pickup and plowing and stuff.
It's also condo. Yep.
So, and some of these older streets, there's a couple off of Highland on Durham and Spofford, and so, another one. One of those streets came over. There's 2 people that live on it, and it had been plowed, and now it's not, and it was a difficult situation because the people there are fairly elderly.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark.
On the services side, just to add a little bit of history, Mark Johnson, Patton Drive. We had a very loose form of town government, and therefore there were a lot of private ways that we had a very irregular pattern of which ones we covered and which ones we didn't. When we went to a town manager form of government, one of the things Michael did was actually assess, you know, look at a lot of the deeds, look at the condition of the properties. Some properties, some streets we were plowing, actually say, you know, were deed restricted, we shouldn't have been plowing. There were some major insurance risks to the town. So a process was started to professionalize it, but it was changing the service levels that people had been experiencing. And there were some of the private ways, they didn't want to have the private way sign on the street, and for some reason it was allowed that it wasn't there. So it's understandable someone buys it, they don't see the private way underneath the street sign, so they may not have been aware of it. But the point is, it was a very sloppy process, and it all became aware, as Michael was trying to professionalize what services we were doing in managing the risks of where the town was exposed. And that became sort of the inventory, and that's sort of the beginning of the process, for what it's worth.
Great. Thank you. Anything else on that?
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay. Are we on to the number 6?
I think so.
Okay. Is Ann going to be here? Or?
No.
Okay.
She's on, I believe, she's away now.
Okay.
Yeah, she's on vacation.
Okay. So can you just kind of bring us up to date on this municipal vulnerability preparedness program?
Yeah, this is basically a program that the state has generated that basically allows communities in Massachusetts to prepare contingency plans and list out areas of concern that may be subject to climate change impacts. And it's a fairly involved planning process, evaluation process to determine what are the vulnerabilities in each community that need to be documented, that need to be evaluated, and that potentially need to have design, engineering, capital solutions devoted to them in order to make communities better withstand.
Resilient.
Yeah. Good word. So that's effectively what the program is.
So
I had just introed the MVP program a little bit.
Okay. You got some information to share with the board from Mayor
Yes,
Rowe,
the
right? So
board members have had
Thoroughly
it for a while.
digested all the pertinent information.
If you have any questions, ask away. I'll do my best. I have some familiarity with it from my previous position, so.
So what kinds of things will it fund, potentially, if you...
Well, so right now, we're looking for so it's very prescriptive process from the state. They have to start with the planning grant funds, and it will fund the complete cost of the consultant to do it. The state has taken it upon themselves to train 80 or so different consultants that can perform this work. They'll pay for the consultant. Our pledge, the only thing that we are required to provide is some staff time to help facilitate the project. That is resulting in an 8-hour planning session, 8 contiguous hours. It can either be 1 8-hour day or 2 4-hour days where you get all the same people to show up at both. Most towns go with 1 8-hour day because that tends to be easiest. And they develop the plan, identifying all the different vulnerabilities and ideas for what to do to mitigate those so that they can put forward projects. And then once you have the plan, you can pick from that list to pursue competitive round funding to do some of that work. It's also a box that you can check off, as you might know from doing state grants, that they have different boxes. Are you a complete streets community? Are you a green community? Are you, do you have an open space and recreation plan? The more of those boxes you can check off, the higher up, you get more points for certain competitive grants and things. So this makes us eligible for other monies beyond the MVP monies because we've gone through this process and undertaken this kind of really thoughtful deliberation. There's some things that will come out of it that we might be able to do that won't cost a whole lot of money, like upgrading some of our zoning to require that future development be done to meet future climate change expectations. So there's a whole aspect of that kind of is important for towns to consider and undertake, depending on the community and what your hazards are. But
so whose climate change expectations are they?
You generally have to tie your expectations to what the state has accepted and adopted in its plans.
So we're getting prepared to become a waterfront community, basically.
You're gonna have all the houses built on stilts across town.
To be honest with you, those are some of the types of things that a town like Winthrop would look at. But coastal, yeah. I don't think we're quite there yet. But inundation flooding is another matter.
Sure.
The science of water and where it flows to and why is really kind of
So it
fascinating.
could-
So it's not just storm-related, it's,
It's infrastructure and support systems to mitigate climate change.
right. And right now, what we're asking is for the planning board to consider writing a letter of support to our application for those funds, so that the state knows that all the pertinent boards and committees are bought in on the process.
That's due in May, right?
It's a rolling application timetable.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't, you can apply at any time. It ends annually and then it reopens, and it just is reopened at the end of January for this next year, and there's not a hard deadline. It's a rolling time. The competitive grant funds are a hard deadline, but we're not there yet. So.
Yeah. And who's typically involved in the planning? I mean, you DPW, public safety.
Planning director, but then the idea is that we will, myself and the department heads and the elected officials will outreach to try to get as wide a cross-section of representation from the community at large. And when you have that 8-hour planning meeting, you want people from all the human services organizations in town, the Council on Aging, the Hamilton Housing Authority, but also Accord Food Pantry, any of those cross-sections that might see things that the regular full-time staff just miss, so.
Okay. Well, we can't vote on it tonight.
No, but we're asking for you to consider it. Hopefully at your next meeting, you can vote to agree to give us a letter of support as we get the application ready.
I had prepared a short, sweet letter for the board, but unfortunately, we won't be able to sign it tonight, but we'll have it on the next agenda as well.
I take it you lost a member during the course of this evening's festivities.
Well, interestingly enough,
temporarily, not permanently, but
he went to the Conservation Commission in Essex because he's demoing a cottage that he has in Essex because of where it's at relative to sea level. And he's going to be rebuilding on another portion of the site that's higher gradient, so.
Who's this you're talking about?
That was Peter.
Oh, Peter.
That's why he had to leave tonight, evidently.
So that's why he had to leave tonight, is to deal with effectively this, so.
For a town like Hamilton, certainly we're not impacted by stormwater from the ocean the way other communities that I've been associated with have been, but there are lots of different impacts that are expected from climate change. Urban areas talk about heat islands and the need to improve the amount of vegetation that are in the cities so that they can kind of naturally cool those areas and things like that. So during this planning day, you would try to uncover all of those things that would impact Hamilton and be. So the planner that comes in has a range of folks that they can work with to model the rising water, to model heat impacts, to model wind impacts. We'd probably count wind as a thing that we're concerned about because of the trees. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
So we can't vote on minutes either, so.
Right.
So I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
No, we can't vote on that either.